Hello, my name is Charles, and this is my usability study and recommendation report for the Meknology file structure. Now, Meknology is a small startup based in Southfield, Michigan. They're currently developing a solution for metal plating wastewater. Now, what are we going to be studying in this usability study? We're going to be studying the internal drive structure of Meknology LLC. This company currently uses Google Drive to sort all of their files. Currently, there is one root file called Paladin. All other files are nested under that. Now, we're going to be studying how friendly this structure is to new users as well as the expert users. It's important that we consider both new and old users because new users will be critical to expanding the functions of the business, while the old users will be continuing on the functions. Now, the company is hoping to expand and bring in new people, and having a usable file structure will be extremely beneficial. It's also important that we study how usable file structures are because they are often built as needed. There's little consideration taken into naming conventions and structure, and doing a usability analysis will create concrete results on how to improve that. Now, how do we study something like this? We use several usability methods to create a final recommendation, and then those recommendations are implemented later on. Now, moving into the methods, first is a UX tour. Now, the UX tour is a study that observes experienced users and their frequent use of the object of study. In this study, 3 experts will use the file structure, and the researcher will take notes of their thoughts, actions, and how the overall interaction went. Then, an inexperienced user will be asked to find the same file that the expert found and describe their steps from beginning to end. Oftentimes, there's a lot of confusion, and this can lead to a lot of great results for the research. Next is a heuristic analysis. Heuristic analyses are extremely powerful for generating a solid list of recommendations and target areas to work on. It will give you a list of exactly which items need to be improved. Now, for this heuristic analysis, Gerhard Powell's cognitive engineering principles will be used to analyze the overall data structure. These heuristics were developed for enhancing human-computer interaction, or HCI, and interpreting data, where Nielsen's heuristics deal more with the user interface itself. The third method we will be studying is the scenario-driven Think Aloud protocol. This method aims to observe a user in their typical interaction with the file structure. Each user will be asked to execute a task. In this study, they will be asked to find one of the files described back in the UX tour. Finally, the card sorting method. This card sorting technique will demonstrate what logical groups form from the names of files. This method calls for the participants to take cards labeled with file information and sort them into groups that make the most sense to the user group as a whole. Now, going into the results from each individual method. First, we have the UX tour. Now, first, each expert was able to identify the file they used most and a description and breakdown of the naming structure. Most of the naming structures did not match any of the other files. That was very frustrating for a lot of the users. And as you can see on the other side of the slide here, the first file, mi_part111.pdf, and then the second one has a date and then the name, and then the third one doesn't have a date or any other information. It's very inconsistent, and that causes a lot of frustration for the users. We also found that files deeper in the structure were more difficult for all users to find, not just the inexperienced, but experts as well. And naming convention was different from each major folder structure. This was very confusing. As you can see, Meknology video logo does not match the date first structure found in another structure. Moving on to the heuristic analysis. This method highlighted a widespread lack of a naming convention. This study also highlighted the need for alternate files for quick reference. This method also revealed multiple folders with picture content that was not sorted. Now, this method, it suggested creating a drive-wide name structure merging multiple related files into one new folder in the root of the file, and creating a document to track names and location of all the files in the drive. This method created a lot of helpful results that told the researchers exactly what aspects of the study needed to be worked on first. Moving on to the scenario-driven Think Aloud protocol. Now, this method highlighted two key points: the need to follow understandable common naming structures, and the need to further study where users expect to find the file they are looking for. In this study, we are able to see what people are thinking while they're through their thoughts. This is a super helpful tool in analyzing how the usability affects their thoughts. In this method, a lot of users were found to go and follow the same path when searching for a specific file. This can be interpreted as a suggestion for a potential file spot. If users are assuming that the file will be in one location, it might be better to move the file to that location. Now, another improvement suggested by the scenario-driven Think Aloud protocol: continuing the study with more participants will reveal exact paths for the files, and following a standard naming convention will allow those files to be found much easier. Moving on to the final method, the card sort. Now, the card sort showed improvements users would like to see. In the bottom picture, you can see the original structure with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 main folders and several subfolders underneath that. And then in this top picture, you can see the card that was added in the second part of the card sorting method. Now, this allowed users to mess around with the structure and try new combinations in a forgiving environment. This also provided a different perspective to researchers, and originally they had a plan on adding these files and moving them around, but there was a change in perspective in how the layout would work, and moving them around allowed that to happen. Moving on to the final recommendations. Adding a sponsor folder would help sponsors access their needed files quicker. Occasionally, sponsors will access the site and they can get quite frustrated trying to navigate such an inconsistent structure. Combining files will save confusion and clear much needed drive space. And creating a reference document at the root of the folder will allow any users not familiar to the structure to access any file that they needed much faster. Thank you.